Late afternoon. The sky was overcast as if it was about to rain. Yet the air felt oppressively hot, like someone was holding their breath. At the three-room house of Mr. Tran Ngoc Vinh, the sixth-generation head of the Tran family in Dong Thuong village, the lights were already turned on early. Today was the 15th day of the 5th lunar month, the major death anniversary of ancestor Tran Quang Can, the man the villagers called the founding ancestor who built the village and erected the shrine. Mr. Vinh was fumbling with the incense burner at the main altar. Glancing at the clock, it was almost 6 p.m. Yet the relatives and guests still hadn't fully arrived. The incense smoke formed a thin stream, then suddenly curled, spiraled, and vanished, in a strange way. Maybe he's already returned, Mr. Vinh muttered. What's that, dear? You saw the smoke swirl again? His wife stepped out from the kitchen, still holding the ladle she used to stir the black bean dessert. Yeah, since noon. The incense smoke has kept curling and reversing. Very strange. I even dreamed about him last night. What kind of dream? He was standing right at the head of the bed. Very stern. Didn't say a word, just pointed toward the back garden, where the old stone grave is. His wife froze, swallowed hard. That sealed grave? Oh heavens! No one's dared go near it for years. Remember what your mother used to say? That grave is sacred. Disturbing it will bring misfortune. Mr. Vinh nodded slowly. Exactly. And I think something's not right. 3 days ago, I was watering the plants and saw human footprints leading straight to the grave. Someone definitely went in there. Probably just kids. They always play hide and seek. She snapped. No, the footprints were big. And there were traces of half-burnt incense sticks, strangely. Red incense. Not the yellow ones we use. Both fell silent. A sudden gust of wind howled through the yard, making the window creak and slam against the wall with an eerie thud. Outside, the extended family was gathering, setting up tents and arranging tables. Some were cutting meat, preparing the main offerings. Uncle Luong, a distant cousin of Mr. Vinh, was laughing while working. Only once a year does our Tran family come together like this. Let's go big, make it lively. With Ancestor watching, I'm sure he'll be pleased. No one noticed that in the back garden, Lin, Mr. Vin's eldest grandson, now 27, was standing still, staring toward the sealed grave. His eyes were deep and hollow, his hand holding a bundle of red incense sticks. A neighbor passed by, caught sight of him, and hissed quietly, "Is that Lin? Dear heavens! If he steps near that place, nothing good will come." The person walking with her tugged her sleeve. "Keep your voice down. Kids nowadays don't respect the old warnings." But that grave, rumor has it that it once sealed the fate of the whole bloodline. If disturbed, the whole family could be affected, not just one person. When the ceremony began, Lin still hadn't returned. The family had gathered at the tables. But on the main altar, the incense smoke suddenly died out. A woman from the family stood up to relight it, but the stick flared up and then instantly snuffed out. No one said anything, but everyone exchanged worried glances. Mr. Vinh furrowed his brow. He hurried to the yard and looked toward the back garden, just in time to see Lin disappear from view. He shouted, "Lin, come here now. What are you doing?" No answer. The wind picked up again, fiercer this time, blowing table curtains wildly. On the main altar, the incense ashes spun rapidly, then suddenly ignited like someone had poured oil on them. That night, people heard moaning sounds from the grave area. The sounds were like someone sobbing or groaning from deep underground. And Lin, by morning, he was nowhere to be found. All that remained was a muddy footprint, stained with red incense, right in front of the porch. The sun had just begun to rise. The first rays slanted through the beetle palm leaves in front of the ancestral house. But the chill in the early morning wind made everyone shiver. Oddly, it wasn't a weather chill. Mr. Vinh had been awake since dawn, sitting silently on the porch, eyes staring toward the back garden. That place, the sealed ancestral grave. The grass was still wet with dew. Mossy, damp, and there was still no sign of Lynn. Mrs. Lan, Mr. Vin's wife, stepped out, gently placed her hand on his shoulder. All night long, no one saw him. His phone doesn't go through either. Should we call the police? Mr. Vin brushed her hand away, his voice hoarse. Call the police for what? It hasn't been 24 hours. And he's still within our property. Who'd believe he's missing? Besides, I don't think he went far. I'm afraid he's still somewhere around here. She shuddered. You mean the ancestral grave? Mr. Vin didn't reply, only tightened his grip on the lighter in his hand. Last night, he had another dream of Ancestor. But this time, Ancestor wasn't just standing, he was sitting right in the center of the grave. His eyes furious, holding a bundle of red incense, and whispering a phrase that Mr. Vin still remembered clearly in the morning. Disturb my grave, and blood must pay. Dogs barked at the alley's entrance. People turned their heads. A figure was approaching the ancestral house. It was Lin. But his steps weren't normal. He dragged himself forward, arms limp, head drooping, hair matted with sweat. His body looked like it had just crawled out of a muddy pit. Everyone stirred. There, that's Lin. Oh my God, where has he been all night? Look at his face. Why is it so pale? Only Mr. Vin stood frozen. Lin stopped at the porch, looking at his father. He said softly, his voice hoarse, low, eerily unfamiliar. Father, I'm so cold. I'm about to be dragged away. Mr. Vin sprang up. What are you saying? Lin? Who's dragging you? Who? Lin looked up. His eyes rolled white, pupils clouded like someone possessed. The crowd began to back away in fear. He whispered, I only lit one red incense stick. I didn't mean to, but someone was already there when I stepped in. That person had no face. The whole yard fell silent. Uncle Luan, who once guarded the cemetery, trembled. No face? Oh God, that's a lost soul. People who've passed but haven't moved on. Their faces start to fade. That's written in the old texts. Lin collapsed onto the tiled floor, hissing. They said, something is buried beneath that soil, they said. I must not touch the round stone under the void tree. But I stepped on it. Mr. Vin rushed to help him. But the moment he touched Lin, the boy jerked up like he was electrocuted, then passed out. That afternoon, the family locked the back door tight. No one dared go near the garden. But just as they were tidying up the altar, came knocking from the direction of the grave. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks. Clear, heavy, slow, like echoes from beneath the earth. Mrs. Lan collapsed onto the floor, face drained of all color. Someone go check who's at the back door. No one moved. At that moment, the incense burner on the altar suddenly caught fire, then cracked in half. A sharp crack rang out. At the exact moment the wall clock stopped ticking. That night, Mr. Vin sat alone, lighting incense. There was no wind, yet the flame kept flickering. He pulled out an old sheet of paper. It was the ancestral grave map left by his grandfather. On it, a circular symbol, right where Lin said he stepped. Beneath that circle, 3 Chinese characters written in black ink. In Huyat Fong. Mr. Vin's hands trembled. Those 3 words meant only one thing. Sealed with blood. He exhaled, a breath icy cold. Perhaps, from this moment on, the Tran family would never know peace again. Noi ban kan min ju don teep theo. Dung thumbnail hei chin jiong dak ai fu hop kich tin hun. Ku noi ne. The next morning, it was still early. But the yard of the Tran family ancestral house was already crowded with murmuring voices. Everyone was worried, not because the death anniversary preparations weren't finished, but because Lin, the eldest grandson who had just returned after a night of disappearance, was lying motionless in bed. Occasionally mumbling something, people whispered that he was possessed. No one dared speak loudly, only whispered quietly. He's been muttering nonsense all night. Sounded like an old man's voice, mixed with a choking sound. Like someone being strangled. Could it be? The ancestor himself has entered him? Mr. Vin stood outside, listening to everything. He wasn't ready to believe it, but his eyes were heavy. And he still clutched the old paper that read, "Blood Seal Curse." Uncle Luong, who once guarded the village temple, came closer and asked softly, "Brother Vin, I need to ask you honestly. That grave in the back garden, when it was built, was there any mistake in the ritual?" Mr. Vin was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. "I suspect there was. When my grandfather was alive, he said, the ancestor's grave wasn't ordinary. He passed during the spirit hour, right on the day of triple conflict. So a special ritual had to be used to seal the grave, called a blood seal to protect the dragon vein. Was that dark magic or righteous? Not dark, but if someone breaks the seal by accident, the spirit underneath will not rest. And when the ancestor is angered, no one in this bloodline will be spared." Inside the house, Lin was still unconscious, but at times, he opened his eyes and let out a chilling smirk. The voice wasn't his. "You dare disturb my grave?" Mrs. Land screamed. "Oh my God, did you hear that? He's speaking in the voice of an old man." Mr. Vin rushed in, knelt down, trembling as he placed his hand on his son's forehead. It was burning hot. "Lin, it's your father. Can you still hear me?" Lin opened his eyes. They weren't fully white anymore, but cloudy, like a layer of mist covering them. He whispered, "Father, last night I saw someone wearing a black robe, holding incense, standing next to the grave. That person called me the blood betrayer." Mr. Vin was shaken. "Heaven help us, blood betrayer?" At that moment, Elder Dong, the eldest in the family who had come from the city for the ceremony, was sitting in the side house. He suddenly spoke. "If he's truly a blood betrayer, then someone in our family must have broken the seal long ago." Everyone turned their heads. "Brother Dung, what are you saying?" The elder nodded, speaking slowly. "That blood seal, no one dared touch it. But in 2003, something happened. Back then, I believe you still remember." Mr. Vin froze. "You mean, the time lightning struck the ancestor's grave during the storm? That was just nature." "No. After that, someone secretly dug into the grave to retrieve a black stone box. I know because I was asked to keep it a secret." The whole family was stunned. Who would dare do such a thing? "How do you know?" Elder Dung pulled an old photo from his pocket. In it was a man in a raincoat, holding a shovel, standing sideways near the ancestor's grave. That man was Hone, son of Uncle Tu. A few years later, he died suddenly. Blood came out of his nose, no clear cause. The air froze. Suddenly, Lin sat up and screamed, "Hone, give it back, return it, bring the seal back." Then he collapsed onto the bed, foaming at the mouth. Mr. Vin didn't hesitate any longer. He opened the altar chest and took out an old wooden box. Inside was the family's ancient genealogy book, its pages yellowed with age. He flipped to the last page and pointed at a line of text. "The blood seal passes through 3 generations, if touched without permission. The 3rd generation will pay." Uncle Luong trembled. Lin is the 3rd generation. That afternoon, the sky darkened though it was barely past 4 p.m. Black clouds covered the sky above the back garden, where ancestor Tran Quang Can's sealed grave lay. Mr. Vin stood at the door, holding the family book he had just retrieved from the altar chest. Every line in it burned into his eyes. The line read, "The blood seal passes through 3 generations, if touched without permission. The 3rd generation will pay." Lin was the 3rd generation, the one possessed, the one about to pay. And the ancestor had warned them clearly from the start. He gripped the paper tightly and called out, "Uncle Luong, call Elder Dung and Uncle Bon Nia here. I want to open the grave." The noisy courtyard suddenly fell silent. "Open the grave? Brother Vin, are you out of your mind?" That's the ancestor's tomb. I'm not crazy. But if we don't open it, Lin won't survive, and the others won't live in peace either. Elder Dung went silent, seeing the look on Mr. Vin's face. He knew things had gone too far to turn back. By nearly 5 p.m., 5 men in the family, including Mr. Vin, carried shovels, flashlights, red cloth, gloves, and quietly headed to the back garden. They said nothing to anyone, only left Mrs. Lan to watch over Lin, reminding her carefully, if anything strange happens, don't call his name. The ancestor's grave was covered in thick grass. On the grave's surface was a small round stone, about the size of a duck egg, buried near the old void tree. Mr. Vin, trembling, cleared the grass and carefully lifted the stone. Beneath it was a small hollow. Inside was a talisman made from rice paper, now decaying, its Chinese characters faded, a corner stained red with dried blood. Uncle Ba Nia shuddered. This is the seal, but why is it so decayed? Someone touched it already? Mr. Vin nodded. Hone, from the second generation, removed it 20 years ago. They dug further. After just a few shovel strikes, a hard object knocked with a loud clack beneath the soil. It was the stone and wood lid of the burial chamber. Careful, Mr. Vin whispered, and together they lifted the lid. Inside the chamber, there weren't one but 2 sets of remains. The whole group went pale. One lay in the center, dressed in a black robe, clearly the ancestor. The other was smaller, curled up underneath, with strands of hair still clinging, a person not listed in the family records. Uncle Luong gasped. Heaven help us, 2 bodies? How could there be 2 in the ancestor's grave? Mr. Vin sank to the ground, holding his head. This can't be. No one ever mentioned this. Elder Dung shone the flashlight carefully, then paused. Look, beside the smaller body, there's a silk cloth, embroidered with a single word, Wei. Uncle Ba Nia's eyes widened. A girl's name. Why would a woman be buried with the ancestor? No one could answer. The wind suddenly rose, wave after wave. The void leaves rustled like someone was walking atop the grave. Then, from the village, the temple drum sounded 3 times, tung, tung, tung. Even though no one was at the temple at that hour. That night, when the group returned home, Mrs. Lan ran out shouting, Mr. Vin, Lin's awake, but he just sits still, staring at the door and smiling. Everyone rushed in. Lin sat on the bed, eyes wide open, lips curled into a cold smile. When he saw Mr. Vin, he finally spoke, in a girl's voice. You remember me? I'm Wei, the one with no name in the genealogy, the one buried alongside and forgotten. The whole house fell into stunned silence. I was a servant girl of the ancestor. I was accused of being pregnant with his child, then strangled to death, buried beneath his tomb. No name, no offerings. No one ever called me the departed. Lin threw his head back and screamed. I have returned. Opening the grave was an invitation. I will reclaim what was stolen from me. Then collapsed, fainted. Mr. Vin could no longer stand. His hands shook uncontrollably. He whispered, we were wrong. Wrong from the moment we dared forget a soul who had died. It had been drizzling since dawn. Gray clouds veiled the hill behind the village, where the ancestor's grave lay in silence, but everyone knew it was no longer at peace. Inside Mr. Vin's house, the air was heavy, like someone had just passed away. Lin, after waking up from yesterday's possession, was lying unconscious. Not eating, not speaking, eyes wide open but unfocused. Mrs. Lan kept lighting incense, her fingers moving over prayer beads, mumbling, Namo Amitabha Buddha. If there are spirits with resentment or grievances, please forgive the children and grandchildren. Elder Dung sat at the main table, flipping through the genealogy book, his face tense. There's no name Wei in here, nothing recorded at all. But if she was a servant, then by ancient customs, she wouldn't be included in the family record. Uncle Ba Nia interjected. But being buried together, being killed and then covered up, that's a sin. A sin for the whole bloodline. Mr. Vin nodded, speaking softly. I know, and maybe the ancestor himself is now bearing the consequences. Burying the living, they can never move on. The house fell silent, only the sound of rain tapping against the tile roof. Cold, wet, heavy. That noon, Mr. Fuok, an old man nearly 80, who used to be the gravekeeper long ago, suddenly came to Mr. Vin's house. He walked with a cane, back hunched, eyes dim, but his voice was clear. I need to see the family head. There's something I must say. Something I've kept for nearly 60 years. Everyone turned their gaze toward him. Mr. Vin rushed to help him sit down, pouring a cup of still warm tea. What do you know, sir? Mr. Fuok's trembling hand unfolded an old handkerchief. Inside was a scorched scrap of paper, still bearing faded purple ink. Wei, the one buried alongside, must not be spoken of, or calamity will befall the entire bloodline. Mr. Vin gasped. Where did this come from? Mr. Fuok sighed, eyes welling with tears. I was the one assigned to guard the ancestor's grave the night of the burial. But that night, I saw them bring an extra bundle, wrapped in red cloth. About the size of a woman. They buried it with him without announcing a name. Who did that? Who told you to stay silent? Mr. Fuok shook his head. It was your grandfather, and a strange man, not of our bloodline. They said, if anyone speaks the name of the one below, the family will be cursed. I was afraid, so I hid this paper in a chest for almost 60 years. Uncle Luong cut in. Why are you telling us now? Mr. Fuok looked out at the yard, voice choking. Because I dreamed of a girl in a white dress standing beside my bed. Her face was bruised purple, her hair soaking wet. She didn't speak, just pulled my hand, pointed toward the grave. 3 nights in a row. I understand now. It's time. I returned the truth. That night, the family prepared a small offering, placed just outside the veranda. They didn't pray to the ancestor, but to Miss Wei. A new incense bowl was set temporarily under the eaves. Mr. Vin poured wine, his voice trembling as he prayed. If someone was truly buried unjustly, and her name was Wei, then today, on behalf of the Tran family, I apologize. I offer worship. I offer prayer. Please no longer hold resentment. The wind blew through, incense smoke spiraled thick. One stick suddenly flared up, glowing red like a fire blossom. Mrs. Land shivered. Heavens above, that's a sign. At that moment, Lin opened his eyes, sat up straight, and spoke in a clear girl's voice. I accept, but the one truly at fault is still alive, and that person must bow their head. Then he collapsed again, eyes closed as if he had never awoken. The next morning, the incense bowl for Miss Wei cracked in half. Uncle Ba Nia panicked. This isn't enough. She's not at peace. No one's taken responsibility. Just then, Mr. Fuok had a seizure. He mumbled, I didn't kill. I just saw the ancestor press her head down. They told me to keep quiet. Everyone stared in shock. Mr. Fuok continued in delirium. She cried, said, I did nothing wrong. I just carried his blood. Why did you bury me alive? The sound of rain now seemed like sobs echoing through the tiles. That night, no one in the Tran family could sleep. Lin's voice, through Miss Wei, still echoed in their minds. I accept, but the one truly at fault is still alive, and that person must bow their head. After revealing the truth, Mr. Fuok lay unconscious in his room, forehead burning with fever, lips constantly muttering, Miss Wei, forgive me? I didn't bury you. I only saw. The whole family was anxious, someone boiling herbal water, others applying medicated oils, but his condition didn't improve. The next morning, a rare ray of sunlight broke through days of gloom. Mr. Vin called an emergency meeting at the Ancestral Hall, summoning all key family members, from Elder Dung to Uncle Ba Nia. Aunt Bei, even distant relatives who still remembered their roots. His voice was low and direct. I believe it's time we discuss relocating the ancestor's grave. The room went dead silent. Elder Dung's eyes widened. Brother Vin, what did you say? Moving the ancestor's grave means disturbing the dragon vein, destroying the spiritual order. No one's ever dared in hundreds of years. I know, but you all see what's happening. Ever since Miss Wei's story came to light, disasters haven't stopped. She has no proper altar, no name in the genealogy. We must start over, separate the graves, move the ancestor, build a new shrine. Uncle Ba Nia shook his head repeatedly. You think it's that simple? The villagers will talk, our family will be divided. And if the ancestor disapproves, none of us will have peace. Mr. Vin slammed the genealogy book on the table. No one wants this, but if we leave it as is, the next generations will suffer. I won't watch my children be possessed. My descendants lose their lives to a vengeful spirit. Suddenly, the incense bowl on the ancestor's altar made a soft pop. Ashes rose in red sparks, and the bowl began smoldering, white smoke rising straight to the ceiling. Mrs. Land screamed, "Heavens! The ancestor's incense bowl, it's burning!" Everyone rushed over. Strangely, only the middle bowl burned, the two side ones remained untouched. The fire wasn't violent, but the smoke spiraled into a vortex, curling toward the genealogy book on the table. The first page of the book flipped itself open, stopping at a line. The one beneath the earth is the root. If her name is not recorded, the land itself cannot rest. No one dared speak another word. Mr. Vin clenched his fist. The ancestor, he too doesn't want this to continue. That night, Lin still hadn't fully awakened. But strangely, he suddenly sat up in the middle of the night, opened his eyes, and spoke in his own voice. "Father, tonight I saw the ancestor. He stood at the doorstep, but he didn't look at me. He looked at someone behind you." Mr. Vin turned around. Behind him was no one. But the back door swung open on its own. Though there was no wind, the family stayed up all night. The next morning, word spread across the village. Mr. Fuok had died during the night. His mouth was wide open, eyes staring, hand still gripping the old handkerchief with the word, "Wei." His funeral was rushed, but what chilled everyone to the bone was the mirror above his bed, cracked down the middle. Like a clean slash, neighbors whispered. Mr. Fuok knew about the injustice, so he was taken with her. If we don't properly honor Miss Wei, more will die. The following night, while the family was discussing dividing the grave, Lin suddenly bolted upright, eyes wide, finger pointing toward the altar. Someone standing there, wearing a white scarf, hair hanging loose, face covered in blood, neck bruised like it was strangled. Mrs. Lan fainted on the spot. Mr. Vin clutched his head, breathing heavily. "We can't wait any longer. Tomorrow, I'll go to the district office to request a permit for reburial. If we don't, no one in our family will ever find peace again." That early morning, Mr. Vin rose early, donned his gray dye, and carried a stack of documents along with an old photocopied family genealogy. He planned to go to the district office to request permission from the authorities to relocate the ancestral grave and separate the remains. A task no one had dared to undertake in over 100 years. Lin, after many nights of spiritual possession, still lay unconscious, but this morning, he suddenly murmured, "In the shirt, there's still a talisman." Mr. Vin turned back, pressing, "A talisman? What are you saying?" Lin didn't respond further, sinking back into deep sleep. Yet those vague words pierced Mr. Vin's mind like a needle, leaving him uneasy. At the district land office, Mr. Vin presented all the documents, reasons for reburial, the grave layout, and the clan's consensus. But at the final part, the young officer flipped through the papers and frowned. "Why does this file have a red stamp from 2003? Well, previously, someone in the family applied to renovate the ancestral grave. Who applied? Mr. Vin hesitated briefly before answering. Hone, Uncle Tu's son. The officer looked up directly. Mr. Hone passed away nearly 20 years ago. Didn't he? Yes, that's correct. Then, you should know. In the internal archives, Mr. Hone's file has handwritten alterations, and the approving officer was suspended for misconduct. There's evidence of document forgery. That grave was omitted from the official cemetery system. Mr. Vin was stunned. So, can I submit a new application? The officer sighed. You can, but it will require re-verification. At least 3 months. 3 months. Too long. Returning home, barely catching his breath, Mr. Vin heard the village abuzz. Uncle Tu, Mr. Hone's father, was just found dead in the bathroom. On the wall, he had drawn a circle with 3 blood spots using charcoal. In his clenched hand was a crumpled note, scrawled with the words, I know, I saw, I stayed silent, I must pay. Mr. Vin was shaken. No way. Uncle Tu had nothing to do with this. Why? Uncle Ba Nia pulled him aside, whispering, No, brother, I recall. When the ancestor was alive, Uncle Tu was his close attendant. Perhaps, he helped place Ms. Wei's body into the grave. Mr. Vin was aghast. That evening, Mr. Vin quietly went to the backyard, carrying a torch and a bundle of incense. He headed straight to the ancestral grave, where the stone stele still stood tall, though beneath it lay many unresolved grievances. He lifted the round stone at the base of the starfruit tree. Peering into the grave, this time, he brought a small shovel, determined to open Ms. Wei's section, to see if Lin's words held truth. After nearly 2 hours, he reached the lid of a black ironwood coffin, where Ms. Wei was interred. As he lifted the lid slightly, a musty odor overwhelmed him. But what made him break into a cold sweat was the red silk cloth wrapped around the body, and an intact gold and silver talisman pressed against Ms. Wei's chest. On the talisman were 3 blurred Chinese characters, still discernible. Fong Nu Huyat, seal female blood. Mr. Vin dropped his hands, stepping back, heart pounding. Oh my God. Not only buried alive, but also sealed with a blood-locking talisman? Was she truly the ancestor's child? Returning home, before he could speak, Lin suddenly burst into tears, scratching his chest, shouting, I am a daughter. I was despised. I wasn't allowed to be human. I was sealed. I was buried like an animal. Everyone rushed to restrain Lin. Mr. Vin stood frozen, tears streaming down. That night, he lit incense, praying in the center of the house. For the first time addressing Ms. Wei, if you are truly of the ancestor's bloodline, then I, the clan elder, seek to restore justice. I will allocate land. I will inscribe your name in the genealogy. I will establish a separate altar. I will invite a monk to lift the grave seal. Please forgive the innocent. Outside, a sudden cool breeze swept through, causing the incense ash to fall neatly into the newly established bowl for Ms. Wei. The ember glowed red. It didn't extinguish. The next morning, the sky was lightly clear, but the atmosphere in the Tran family ancestral hall was unusually gloomy. The Fong Nu Huyat talisman that Mr. Vin retrieved from Ms. Wei's coffin last night was now placed in a glass box on the altar. Anyone who looked at it felt a chill. Elder Dung sighed, his voice weary. The blood-sealing talisman is meant to sever bloodlines. The ancients used it to cut off lineage, especially for those unacknowledged. Uncle Ba Nia, sitting nearby, murmured, whether she was a daughter or a pregnant servant, she still carried the ancestor's blood. Yet, she was sealed to such an extent. Mr. Vin clenched his fists. We cannot let her continue to suffer as a restless spirit. I've invited the abbot from Vien Ton Pagoda to chant sutras and lift the grave seal. The whole family nodded. That afternoon, the abbot of Vien Ton Pagoda, a serene old monk with a calm gaze, stepped into the ancestral hall holding a large rosary. But as he set foot on the threshold, the wind chimes suddenly curled up, and the incense bowl on the side table cracked with a pop. Startling everyone, the monk paused, frowning slightly. "There's a spirit, still unsettled." Mr. Vin quickly clasped his hands. "Don't worry, Master. It's Ms. Wei. I believe she's not malevolent, just unheard. Please assist us." The monk clasped his hands before his chest, closed his eyes, and recited a short mantra. The incense smoke gently wafted, but within 10 seconds, the candles on both sides of the altar simultaneously extinguished. The monk stepped back slightly. "There's not just one spirit. There's a younger soul being held back." Mr. Vin froze. "You mean?" The monk nodded slowly. "A child, an unborn spirit, deeply connected to Ms. Wei." The entire family was stunned. Elder Deng's voice was hoarse. "Heavens, she was pregnant when buried?" Aunt Lan covered her mouth. "Then the baby was buried alive too." That evening, after everyone had dispersed, only Mr. Vin, Lin resting, and little Fuang, the 4-year-old daughter of Aunt Sao, remained in the yard, playing alone with her doll. Suddenly, little Fuang looked up, staring directly at the altar. Then, spoke in a voice not her own. "Mom, why did you leave me in the ground? It's so dark. I'm scared, so cold." "Mom." Everyone was speechless. Aunt Sao rushed to pick up her child, but little Fuang continued to gaze intently toward the ancestral grave behind the house. "That uncle said he'd take me from Mom. I don't want that. I don't want to be sealed. I just want to see Mom's face, once." Aunt Sao's voice trembled. "Oh my God, what is she saying? Who taught her that?" Mr. Vin collapsed into a chair, his face pale. "No one taught her. It's the child's spirit following her." The abbot stepped forward, placed his hand on little Fuang's head, and softly chanted a mantra. The child's face began to relax, her voice returning to normal. "Daddy, I'm hungry." That night, the abbot spread a mat in the ancestral hall, lit 7 incense sticks, and placed the removed Fong Nu Huyat talisman in the center. He sat cross-legged, chanting sutras for the departed, but the more he chanted, the more the incense smoke coiled in one spot, drifting toward the back of the house. At that moment, from the ancestral altar, an old portrait fell, its glass frame breaking in two. Uncle Ba Nia bent down to pick it up, then exclaimed in shock, "Brother Vin, this picture isn't of the ancestor. It's another man, doesn't resemble anyone in our family." Mr. Vin rushed over to see. In the photo was a man wearing a brocade ao dai, a gold ring on his hand, with a fierce gaze. On the back of the photo, faintly written, "Seal, temporary authority, year of the rooster." The abbot softly said, "Not the ancestor, but the one who sealed the grave. Perhaps the mastermind behind placing the talisman on Ms. Wei and the unborn child." Mr. Vin breathed heavily. So, the fault wasn't entirely the ancestors. It was the person acting on his behalf. Before dawn, a thick fog blanketed Mr. Vin's backyard. The cold wind whispered through the banana trees, as if someone were murmuring behind them. Inside, Lin lay still, clutching a pencil in his hand. No one recalled placing it there. On the small table beside his bed was a sheet of paper filled with scribbles that, upon closer inspection, seemed oddly familiar. Mr. Vin entered, glanced at the paper, and froze. It wasn't random doodles, it was an ancient-style burial map. In the bottom corner, 3 black inked words stood out: seal, lock, invert. Uncle Ba Nia leaned in, stammering, This map, it's the original from our great-grandfather's time. But it was lost long ago." Elder Deng muttered, "How could he draw this? He's never seen it before." Mr. Vin's voice was hoarse. It wasn't Lin who drew it, someone used his hand. Meanwhile, the abbot sat in the outer room, examining the photograph of the unfamiliar man that had fallen from the ancestral altar earlier. He speculated, this man isn't the patriarch. Yet he's dressed in brocade, seated centrally, wearing a gold ring, a symbol of authority in the past. The inscription, acting authority, year of the rooster, coincides with the time our patriarch passed away. Mr. Vin suddenly recalled, yes, that was the year our patriarch died unexpectedly, without naming a successor. At that time, a distant relative named Tran Bin stepped in to manage the ancestral affairs temporarily. The family was stunned. Medium, +6. Wikipedia, +6. Wikipedia, +6. So, he was the one who sealed the tomb in place of the patriarch. The abbot nodded, and if he used a blood-sealing talisman on Miss Wei, it's likely he aimed to erase a bloodline he didn't approve of. Mr. Vin spread Lin's newly drawn map on the floor, comparing it to the current burial layout. He noticed a missing section in the southeast corner, an overgrown area shaded by an ancient starfruit tree. Bitter Grounds magazine. Pointing, he said, this area isn't documented in our records. Yet Lin detailed it meticulously, even marking it with a red circle. Aunt Lan hesitated. That spot, it's off limits. My mother once told me that anyone who ventured there fell ill with fever and delirium. The village children called it the sealed land, but no one dared disturb it. Determined, Mr. Vin and Uncle Ba took hose to the area. After a few digs, a pungent, musty odor emanated from the soil. Within half an hour, they unearthed a limb-length ironwood box, wrapped in decayed red cloth. Inside was a buffalo hide scroll and a circular emblem engraved with ancient characters: soul suppression, blood block, lineage severance. Clutching the emblem, Mr. Vin whispered, "This is a sealing stamp, not to honor the patriarch, but to sever Miss Wei's bloodline from the main lineage." The abbot confirmed, whoever held this stamp decided who was recorded in the family registry. He didn't just seal the tomb, he altered the bloodline to prevent power disputes. That night, Lin fell into a trance, suddenly sitting up with closed eyes, speaking clearly. Someone, standing in the shadows, holding the sealing stamp. He said, "A servant's child doesn't deserve a name. Must die with the mother." The family sat in silence, tension thick in the air. Lin continued, his voice childlike, "I'm scared, it's so dark. I want my name in the family registry." Then he collapsed back onto the bed, unconscious. The next morning, Mr. Vin personally drafted an addendum to the family registry. Wei, previously unnamed, is hereby acknowledged as a direct descendant of Patriarch Tran Quang Can. The family shall remember her, inscribe her name on the ancestral tablet, and allocate a separate altar. He signed and sealed it with the family crest. The abbot smiled gently. When a name is acknowledged, the spirit rests. When blood is recognized, grievances cease. That day, under a gentle sun, the Tran family held a ceremony in the ancestral courtyard to officially inscribe Miss Wei's name on the patriarch's tombstone. A new tablet was erected beside the patriarch's grave, slightly lower in accordance with tradition, yet prominent amidst the green grass. It bore 4 large characters. Wei, daughter, entered into registry. Below, a smaller inscription read, "Deceased in the year of the snake, unjustly forgotten. Now named, may her soul rest." Mr. Vin stood before the tablet, eyes moist, solemnly praying, "Miss Wei, today, before the entire family, I seek forgiveness. Your name is inscribed, your altar established, and past wrongs end here." Everyone stood in respectful silence, a sense of relief washing over them. That evening, the family prepared an offering table with incense and flowers, placing 2 incense holders, one for the patriarch, one for Miss Wei and her unborn child. Aunt Sao, whose daughter Fuang had previously been possessed, brought the girl forward, gently instructing, "Fuang, light an incense stick for Miss Wei. Ask her to bless you with good health and peaceful sleep." Fuang obediently nodded. then unexpectedly turned to her mother, whispering, "Mom, she's smiling," she said. "Thank you. But someone hasn't responded yet." Aunt Sao turned pale, tightening her hold on Fuang. At midnight, while everyone slept, Elder Deng, the most vocal opponent of inscribing Miss Wei's name, vanished from his bed. The family searched frantically. In the courtyard, they discovered something eerie. In the ashes where offerings had been burned earlier, a clear footprint, bare, without shoes, led straight to the backyard. Mr. Vin shone a flashlight, calling out, "Brother Deng, are you there?" No response. Uncle Ba Nia followed the footprints, which led deeper into the previously sealed area where the lineage-severing stamp had been found days before. There, they saw Elder Deng's jacket hanging on a broken branch, beneath which was an indentation in the earth, as if someone had knelt and then sunk into the ground. No body, no blood, but the ashes were still warm. Nearby lay a partially burned note. "I witnessed. I remained silent. Now I follow, so she won't be alone." The next morning, the ancestral hall opened early. Miss Wei's incense holder still emitted a steady stream of smoke, but the patriarch's was cold. The abbot, upon arrival, observed for a long time before sighing. "The patriarch has withdrawn. The injustice is resolved, but the division in the bloodline, someone still bears its weight." Mr. Vin quietly asked, "You mean, Elder Deng?" The abbot nodded slightly. "Sometimes, the one who suffers isn't the one who caused the harm, but the one entrusted to bear its burden." That night, Lin dreamt a strange vision. He saw a man in a black robe, face obscured, leading a little girl away from the sealed land. The girl turned back, saying, "I'm leaving now. But my mother, she's still waiting for someone to call her daughter just once." Lin awoke in a cold sweat. 3 days after Elder Deng's disappearance, the atmosphere in the Tran family's ancestral hall remained heavy, as if the mist hadn't lifted. Family members grew quiet, sensing that matters were still unresolved. Miss Wei had been named. The child had an altar, but something remained unspoken. That morning, Aunt Hong, Mr. Vin's niece-in-law, was cleaning the ancestral altar as usual. On a misty morning, sparrows scattered as the sound of a shovel echoed once more before the ancestral grave of the Tran family. Mr. Vin, gripping the handle tightly, unearthed the final layer of soil, revealing an unusually thick square stone slab beneath. It didn't resemble the usual grave foundation. Uncle Ba Nia leaned in, tapping it gently. A muffled thud responded. "It's a support stone, but there's a hollow underneath." Mr. Vin, carefully, the two workers lifted the slab. Beneath lay a small cavity, no larger than a child's coffin. Inside rested an old, lacquered jackfruit wood box, its red paint peeling, beside a tiny, worn cloth shirt fit for a 3 or 4-year-old. Embroidered in red thread on the collar was a single word, "Fuck." Mr. Vin's hands trembled as he opened the box. Inside was a small, incomplete skull, placed face down, with hands bound behind as if tied. Silence enveloped the group. The abbot offered a solemn prayer, his voice heavy. "This is a spirit buried face down, a sign of punishment." This child wasn't just hidden, they were considered an ill omen to be sealed away. Mr. Vin closed his eyes, whispering, "Fuck, is it truly you, buried here?" Amidst the weighty atmosphere, footsteps approached from behind. All turned to see Lin emerging from the path beside the bamboo grove. His pace slow, clothes soiled, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Surrounded by concerned relatives, Lin remained silent, walking directly to the newly opened grave. He gazed at the skull, then softly spoke, "He's my brother. I've seen him in dreams, every night." Mr. Vin, worried, asked, "Are you all right? Why did you leave like that?" Lin shook his head gently, then suddenly pointed at Uncle Ba Tuan, who had remained silent. "It was you, tying my hands in the dream." Everyone turned sharply toward Uncle Ba. He looked stunned, then forced a chuckle. What's he saying? Accusing me based on a dream? Lin stepped closer, eyes unwavering. In the dream, you held a red cloth, binding my hands, saying, don't struggle. You're just like fuck. Being born was a mistake. The air grew heavy. The abbot silently placed a small, coal-black gem near the skull. Instantly, it turned a pale red. Mr. Vin gasped. That's a blood-sensing gem. It reddens near close kin. The abbot nodded. The child named Fuck was the biological son of the patriarch. But his mother wasn't Wei. Mr. Vin, trembling, asked. Then, could it be? Lin continued. The one who bound his hands was the keeper of the family records. The one who erased his name before anyone knew he existed. All eyes turned to Uncle Ba Tuan. He stepped back, voice hoarse. Ling-app.com. +4. Translate.google.co.th. +4. Deep L. +4. I was just following orders. When the patriarch died, I only kept the names of legitimate heirs. Any illegitimate children were removed. I didn't know they'd be buried. Lin clenched his fists. You didn't kill, but you stayed silent. And that silence bound my brother's hands for over half a century. That night, a flock of owls perched around the ancestral hall. The wind howled, yet the incense on the altar burned steadily. Mr. Vin lit incense, placing it before 3 urns, for Wei, for Lin Fong, and now, for Tran Phuc, the last child to be acknowledged. On the 14th night, the moon rose, veiled in a misty shroud. The atmosphere in the Tran Ancestral Hall tightened like a drawn strain. As Mr. Vin replaced the incense in the 3 urns, all 3 candles before them extinguished simultaneously. Without a breeze. It was 8:11 p.m., a moment unnoticed then, but later recounted with chills. A child's laughter echoed from the rooftop. Aunt Sao, alarmed, clutched little Fuang. Heavens, there's no child here besides mine. Uncle Ba Nia stepped onto the porch, looking up at the tiles, then froze. Up there, a small shadow, crouching, long hair, face hidden. Mr. Vin stepped out, holding an oak bead rosary, gazing upward. Fuck, or Lin Fong? Whatever you need, just tell us. The shadow remained still, then vanished in an instant. Inside, Lin sat alone. He neither spoke nor moved, merely drawing on the wall with white chalk. The first line, I was hung upside down from the roof. Next, he sketched a child curled up, hands bound, suspended by red cloth. Surrounding were 7 circular marks, resembling nail imprints on tiles. Caretaker Hai turned pale. Those 7 spots. The rafters have black circles. We thought termites caused them. But that's where the patriarch hung lanterns during memorials. Mr. Vin stood stunned. No, those weren't for lanterns. They were for soul sealing. Perhaps someone once hung an unburied spirit there to temporarily bind it, preventing its release. That night, Mr. Loy, the one who unearthed Fuck's skull, suddenly went mad. He tore through his home, shredding tablecloths and pillowcases, wrapping them around himself like a child's garment, muttering, "Don't leave me, I can speak now. I'm not dumb. I remember every face." The family restrained him. A doctor was summoned to administer a sedative. As he drifted into sleep, he whispered, "There's a paper beneath the ceiling, with a name crossed out." The next morning, Mr. Vin and Uncle Ba climbed to the ancestral home's attic. Once used for storage, dust covered everything, but as Mr. Loy had said, a red paper was glued between the rafters. They peeled it off, unfolded it. It read, "Name, Tran Lin Phuc, crossed out due to lack of clan acceptance ceremony. Note, strong yang, inverted yin, incompatible with the dragon vein." The abbot, after reading, silently burned the paper, then clasped his hands. Incompatible with the dragon vein. That's why they denied the child. But this very rejection disrupted the Tran lineage's energy, causing imbalance. It's not the child who brings misfortune. It's how adults treat their own bloodline. After the full moon ritual, the Tran family felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted. No more midnight cries. No more shadows on the rooftop. Little Fuang stopped mumbling in her sleep, and Lin finally rested after weeks of insomnia. But peace lasted only 3 nights. On the 4th night, Lin dreamed of standing before a dilapidated house at the end of a red dirt road in Yenbang village. Its walls were stained, and the tiled roof was crumbling. The creaky door opened. Inside, darkness enveloped a wooden chest bound with black chains. Carved deeply into its lid were the words, "Sealed object. Preserves the clan, severs the lineage." A child's voice echoed, "If it's not opened, our descendants will have no heir." Lin jolted awake, sweat soaking his forehead. Clutched in his hand was a torn piece of paper. Its origin unknown. It wasn't cursed land, but a once sealed house. At dawn, Lin recounted the dream to Mr. Vin and Uncle Ba. They were stunned. Mr. Vin mused, "That house. It's the old ancestral hall. Abandoned since the war. After our patriarch passed, the family moved the shrine to my place. But no one dared touch the old site." Uncle Ba added, "Back then, 2 workers vanished overnight while repairing the beams. Since then, it was sealed off." That afternoon, Mr. Vin led Lin, Uncle Ba, and a young relative named Hung to the house. Just like in the dream, the house was cracked, moss-covered, with a rusted iron bar locking the main door. It took over an hour to break the lock. Inside, the air was damp, mixed with an ancient, peculiar incense scent. In the center stood a wooden chest, identical to the one in Lin's dream. The head monk was summoned. Upon entering, he frowned. "There's a sealing aura, not malevolent, but one meant to preserve bloodlines. Used by great families fearing the loss of heirs." Everyone fell silent. The monk offered a brief prayer, then tapped the chest thrice with his prayer beads. The lock sprang open. Inside was a small wax figure of a faceless infant, marked with 3 red slashes across its belly. Accompanying it was an aged red paper, placed in the 3rd generation, a curse, if the rightful heir isn't chosen. The lineage will end in 3 generations. Uncle Ba stammered, "So, if we don't break this seal, our family line ends 3 generations after the patriarch?" The monk nodded solemnly. "And we are now in that 3rd generation." Mr. Vin clenched his fists. "We can't let this continue. We must break it." The monk conducted a ritual on the spot, chanting, burning the effigy, scattering ashes in the house's 4 corners. As the figure burned, a red smoke plume shot up, then condensed, and sank into the ground. Suddenly, the floor beneath the chest collapsed, revealing a hidden compartment containing a lacquered, gold-gilded box adorned with dragon and phoenix motifs. Opening it revealed the original family register, handwritten by the patriarch, untouched. Both children's names, Lin Fong and Lin Fuck, were listed. At the bottom, in red ink, "If someone erases my bloodline's name, they must take their place, or doom 3 generations." Faces turned pale. Lin whispered. "Uncle Dung," vanished. Mr. Vin murmured. And Uncle Ba Tuan, bedridden, unable to lift his arms. The monk clasped his hands. "A broken bloodline seeks justice. Now, the children are acknowledged. Only one task remains: to replace the ancestral tablet." On the eve of the tablet replacement, the Tran ancestral house buzzed with activity. Tents were set up, incense burners polished, and grand offerings prepared. A new Tanhua green stone tablet bore 3 names: Tran Lin Fong, Tran Lin Fuck, Wei, unwed daughter, rightful blood mother. Mr. Vin placed his hand on the tablet. Silently, after all these years, their names are finally inscribed. But then, the sky darkened. A fierce wind arose from the village's bamboo grove. Thunder roared. 3 lightning bolts struck the ancestral courtyard's corners. Panic ensued. Bricks and stones scattered. Lin, standing near the main pillar, collapsed unconscious. They rushed him inside, laying him in the main hall. Aunt Sao wept. "Lin, wake up, dear." But Lin remained unresponsive. His eyes half closed, hands clenched, lips murmuring, as if reciting names. In his dream, Lin entered an old wooden room bathed in dim yellow light. Before him, an elderly man in a black robe, hair white as snow, knelt before 2 children. He wept. "Forgive me, Fong, fuck, I was wrong, but I lacked the strength to defy them. I was bound by rules, just as you were bound beneath the grave." The children turned, faces blurred, eyes red. Suddenly, the room trembled. A foreign voice, not the patriarch's, spoke from behind a curtain. "It's not enough. One remains unnamed, the most hidden, bearing blood but not the name." Lin awoke with a start. Sweat drenched his brow. He whispered, "Not 3, but 4. One more remains unnamed." Silence filled the room. Mr. Vin sat beside him, gripping Lin's hand. "Tell us, who?" Lin gasped. In the dream, someone stood behind the curtain. Unseen, but a woman's voice. Elderly. She said no one remembers her name. She was the first to die in the ancestral house, yet never given a grave. Uncle Ba exclaimed. Could it be the patriarch's first concubine? The one listed as 7th wife, without a name? Aunt Hai, the longtime caretaker, trembled. Yes, my mother once said, she was the first the patriarch brought home but died in childbirth. Unnamed, the baby didn't survive. She was secretly buried under the old starfruit tree. They hurried to the backyard, to the century-old starfruit tree. Its roots cracked the earth, revealing a small, unmarked stone slab. Mr. Vin knelt, placing his hand on the stone, praying, "If you're the first bearer of our blood, unnamed, today, I offer incense. I acknowledge you and will inscribe your name on the ancestral tablet." The wind howled, but this time, the incense's aroma spread gently. Neither cold nor overpowering. It was soothing. That night, Lin painted a new image on the inner wall. A woman in a white ao dai, cradling her belly, back turned, her hair silver. At her feet, the words, "The first brought home, yet without a name to depart." After the full moon ceremony and the recurring dreams, the entire Tran family agreed to Lin's proposal, to erect a separate memorial for the first wife, the concubine of the founding ancestor, who had died during childbirth and was quietly buried beneath the void tree behind the ancestral house. Aunt Hai sat by the stove, flipping through the family genealogy book, blowing on the fire as she spoke. Back in the day, she was so gentle, but no one ever mentioned her name. People just called her the mute mistress because she didn't speak. Even when she passed, the founding ancestor didn't establish a memorial tablet. Mr. Vin pondered. Burying someone without calling their name. It's no different from binding their soul. We owe her an apology. That morning, Mr. Vin, Uncle Ba, and Lin went to the void tree. Though it had dried up, its roots remained large, twisting like clasped hands. They chose a flat patch of land nearby to perform the ritual of breaking ground for the grave. As they dug into the second layer of soil, Lin's shovel hit something. A piece of dark brown cloth emerged. Lin gently dug around it and lifted it up. Vietnam coracle. It was a decayed handkerchief, rolled up, tightly wrapping a deep red talisman stained with black marks resembling dried blood. The head monk was invited over. Upon seeing it, he paused, his expression turning serious. This isn't a talisman to ward off evil, it's a soul-binding talisman. Infused with real blood, used to keep a spirit from leaving its burial place. Uncle Ba shuddered. So, since her death, she's never been able to find peace? The monk nodded. She wasn't malevolent, but she was wronged. No name, no grave, and bound by blood. Her soul has been anchored at the void tree like a shadow, unable to return. Unable to depart, Lin whispered, "It's because of the child who never got to be born." Aunt Sao, the oldest living member of the family, quietly spoke. "I remember, after she passed, the founding ancestor ordered a hasty burial. He instructed, don't let her go anywhere, so the blood won't bring misfortune outside. They feared disrupting the dragon vein back then." Mr. Vin clenched the handkerchief, his eyes reddening. She harmed no one, yet was harmed by invisible fears. That night, Lin didn't sleep. He hung the painting of the elderly woman with silver hair, turned away, right in front of the altar. He placed the neutralized talisman on a plate of salt, then slowly burned each corner, murmuring, "You're no longer imprisoned. I asked to bring you home." As the talisman turned to ash, the candle on the altar flickered but didn't extinguish. Instead, a very light jasmine-like fragrance wafted through. The next morning, they dug deeper into the soil. They discovered a broken ivory comb buried near the old foundation stone. Mr. Vin picked it up, softly saying, "A broken comb, a severed bond. But now, we'll restore her rightful place." By day's end, they erected a small stele engraved with the words, "The unnamed woman, lost due to difficult childbirth, now reclaimed by the ancestral bloodline." Her name established, the stele was set slightly tilted, facing south, the return gate direction for the nameless in ancient spiritual beliefs. After the memorial ceremony for the forgotten woman, the Tran family believed everything had come to a close. That evening, Mr. Vin invited all descendants for dinner. On the altar, candles burned steadily, incense wafted gently, no longer carrying the previous metallic scent. No one mentioned shadowy figures, and no one experienced sleepwalking anymore. But for Lin, it was different. That night, he dreamed again. No more graves, no more blood, no more angry faces. Just a slender hand gently resting on his shoulder, and a soft lullaby echoing from somewhere. "Hush now, sleep tight, my child." Mother returns to the old place. No longer in despair, Lin opened his eyes, sitting upright. Outside, it was late, but the old attic of the ancestral house suddenly creaked, as if someone had just pushed the wooden door. The next morning, Lin climbed up to the attic alone. It had been locked for years. Amidst the stained cement walls, he noticed a discolored brick. He tapped it lightly, hollow. Using a small hook, he pried it out. Behind it was a square cavity, just enough to hold a small, blackened wooden box with decayed edges. Inside were a child's bronze coat hook, an unsent letter, wrapped in oiled paper, a piece of red thread, once tied around a newborn's wrist. The letter was handwritten, the ink smudged. "If one day you're acknowledged, please let this letter see the light. Mother doesn't ask for anything back. She just wants everyone to know you once had someone waiting. Even in silent longing, I'm sorry I couldn't carry you through life. But if you're reading this, then I'm at peace." No signature, no date, only a water stain at the bottom of the page, like an old tear. Lin held the letter, descended, and handed it to Mr. Vin. He said nothing, simply placed the letter before the altar and lit an incense stick. Lin stepped back, softly saying, "So it's over. Whatever remained unnamed has returned to its rightful place." That night, for the first time in over half a century, the central candle on the altar burned down to its core without extinguishing midway. The laughter of children was no longer a haunting in dreams, but a gentle echo in the hearts of the living. There are those who pass away without needing tears, but need to be called by their rightful name. There are injustices that require no bloodshed, just a heart willing to return. And there are spirits that don't manifest, but will depart if we choose to open the door. This concludes the story. Thank you for reading to the end. If you found it meaningful, please leave a comment, share, and look forward to the next journeys. Don't forget, sometimes, the most sacred thing is the kindness of the living.